Bastards of Oblivion, Episode 10 and a half, The Clones of Baby Hitler, Chapter 8. I am in the mothership.
Congratulations, Trinity.
They spoke in unison and we shook hands. I look around and I noticed I have never really ever seen the rest of the crew before, even though I have been here a few times already. Lieutenant Christian speaks up.
Well, Clarence has just leveled up, but don't get happy.
I was amazed. The crew looked like light beings.
They aren't all light beings.
The lieutenant read my mind.
Now, calm down and face me.
Lieutenant Christian was serious. I turned and stood at attention. He looked at Larry and nodded.
Trinity, there's trouble in the forest.
Larry said, as straight-faced as can be. He was serious. I rolled my eyes.
Seriously,
Larry went on.
the maples want more sunlight.
What the fuck are you talking about? I laughed. I felt my grandmother scold me, and I felt her presence like I hadn't since before she died. That was weird. The lieutenant gave me a look that said,
What is wrong with you?
and I felt ashamed, and I knew that I should watch my tongue. And then Nemo was gone.
I forget they're always here sometimes. My bad.
I said, and I looked at the floor and kicked my toes.
All right, let's get this show on the road. Sit down, Airman.
A lazy boy-style recliner, just like my grandpa's, conveniently appeared right behind me, and I sat down and pulled the lever back into the reclined position.
Oh yeah, this is nice.
I said. It even had the cigar burn from the night he passed away.
Oh, it's the real thing.
Larry said with a wink.
Okay, I want you to look outside.
The lieutenant said. We were in orbit over a planet, but it didn't look like home. The atmosphere was gray with brown clouds.
The gray areas are the cleanest.
Said Larry.
And the brown clouds?
I asked.
Pretty much uninhabitable.
Said the lieutenant.
Welcome to the 22nd and a half century.
I stared at the viewing screen in disbelief.
What the... You mean...
Larry chuckled.
Yep, you just physically time travel.
Wow, that was fast.
And muttered.
Like of an eye technology, Bubba.
Larry got out of his chair. I stared down at the obviously war-torn planet covered in smoke. It was unrecognizable.
What happened?
I gasped.
Have you got the note?
Said Larry. I reach in my pocket and I pull out the note. I hand it to Larry. Larry hands the note to the lieutenant. The lieutenant unwraps the note and hands the saran wrap back to Larry. Larry sniffs the plastic.
Oh, the kids in the culinary lab are gonna love this one.
He says with a grin, and he sets the wrapper down on nothing and it just blinks out of existence.
It's glossolalia, all right?
Says the lieutenant.
Here, take a look.
The lieutenant holds it out towards nobody, and suddenly she was there. Oddly enough, she didn't make me nervous and horny, and I was grateful, but she was still attractive. She smelled like baby powder and flowers instead of baby powder and cigarettes. Lieutenant Christian hands the Admiral the note and she sniffs it.
Tuna fish.
She holds the paper up to the light and it begins to glitter in many colors. I can hear it humming. Yeah, it sort of sounded like a kazoo.
Well, it has a higher frequency than a common light bulb. Take it to the lab.
Her voice was still attractive, but here it was more like my mother's, and I respected her. I began to really dislike being stuck in the world system. The thought made me shake my head in shame. A person, NPC-like to my perception, came out of the wall and took the paper away and walked back into the wall. I touched the wall. It was as solid as any wall I have ever touched. Larry laughed. Then he smiled and waved at someone behind me beyond the wall, which I was not allowed to see beyond. He put his forefinger and pinky out like a telephone and he mouthed, "Call me."
Thank you, Airman. Yeoman, show the young man to his quarters. Trinity,
The Admiral looked at me and I felt pleasant.
sweet dreams. You are dismissed.
I liked her. I really liked her. I didn't lust after her as usual. I genuinely liked her. Another NPC comes out of the wall and says,
Airman, this way, please.
and a hole opens in the wall and a corridor appears. I step into the corridor and I'm in a room with a rectangular thing. I guess it's a bed. So I lay down on it and it is the most comfortable thing I had ever felt yet as far as sleeping goes. I awake in the Oneirosphere. I'm still on the ship. I float through the hull into the outer space and I allow myself to fall to the planet below. The Oneirosphere here is just filthy. I visualize the post I was at just earlier before I was abducted. I fade from falling into standing outside where my quarters would be. But everything is devastated and abandoned. I recall what was in the newspaper and suddenly had an inkling of what I was looking for. Some call it a hunch. Others call it faith. The spirit body has its own peculiar instincts, just like your physical body does. Anyway, I knew what I needed to get, and I knew where to find it. It's a vial containing the DNA of baby Hitler. Allegedly, I think. It could be some of the synthetic stuff that they put in medicine and health supplements. I don't know how I knew it, but it made sense at the time. As I write this, I am losing some of the memory of it due to certain effects being reclassified. You will know this as the Mandela effect. Anyway, since I am in the Oneirosphere, I simply think of myself to an undisclosed location. In the Oneirosphere, it is easier to respond to the instincts of the spirit than it is when we are awake. I knew exactly where to go to find what I needed, and all I had to do was think about it, and I was there. It's like fading from one scene in a movie to another. The dumbass who tried to kill me in the last episode was there, and what he was doing is tough to recall now, but I knew I needed to get the box he was holding. He saw me, but he didn't know who I was.
How do you know you were dreaming?
He asked. He was lucid. I could tell he was an inexperienced dreamer, and he was terrified. I threw some sleep sand at him, but the astral winds were blowing roughly, and I missed him completely.
Give me the box.
I said, and I held out my hand like I expected him to actually comply. He stepped back, and as his fear grew, he shrank a bit. The box didn't shrink, and he looked like a cartoon character. The Oneirosphere is strange. Our thoughts and emotions morph the dreamscape. I knew how to use this to my advantage, however, and I stretched out my hand like my arm was made of rubber, and I grabbed the box away from him. The box had been opened, and inside was a jar with a label that said, "Do not open" on it. The lid was open, and I tightened the jar and closed the box. I got my finger wet, and I licked it without thinking. I started to think of the honey bear to make my escape. Scaredy Pants sat on the floor muttering something to himself, and I was suddenly in my quarters aboard the ship. However, I was still in the Oneirosphere. I placed the box in another special box that is trans-dimensional. In the Oneirosphere, it sort of looks like a cube, but not really. It's hard to explain. Anyway, I walk over to my bed, where I see myself sleeping. Just for fun, I raise my physical arm and wave at myself. This is always amusing. I lie down in the bed and I awaken myself. I seem to recall flipping myself off instead of waving at myself, and this puzzles me.
I need a vacation.
I said out loud. I noticed the clock, but I forget now what time it said. As short as the dream was, I realized I had been asleep for about 4 hours. I do not know how I know this, I just do. This work is exhausting. The cube in the dream is on the table where I left it in the Oneirosphere. On the mundane plane, the box looks like a soccer ball. I sit up on the bed, and an NPC comes in and takes the box away, disappearing through the wall. I sit there listening to the sound effects. Another person comes in and leaves me a pastrami sandwich and a root beer. I realize I really am hungry. I figured I'm ready to continue on, and the wall's open, and I can see what I am allowed to of what I presume is the bridge. I step through the orifice. Larry is there, and so is Lamont.
Congratulations, Trinity. You made it through okay.
Says Larry. Lamont grabs my wrist and looks at him.
Yeah, it looks like you got some on you. I hope it's not contagious.
Lieutenant Christian walks through the wall.
What's all this then?
He says, and grabs my wrist. I can't see anything.
Look me straight in the eye,
I
Airman.
look into the lieutenant's eyes. They are hazel green. I'd never noticed that before.
Do you believe that you got some on you, Trinity?
I believe I did, Jesse.
What did you call me, Airman?
But you said
I changed my mind. I don't like the way it sounds when it comes out of your mouth.
I was crushed and heartbroken.
Take him to confinement.
Without a thought, I was in a room where the walls had always stayed about 6 feet away from me, no matter how close I tried to get. In this way, I was always in the center of the room. I wondered what I had done. I wished I had a chair, and my grandpa's lazy boy appeared. I sat down and felt like I was in trouble. The wall in front of me opened like a vignette, and Marilyn was standing there looking at me through the window. She looked tired. She was in her dress, white admiral's uniform. The one with the short skirt and the long jacket. A tear slowly formed in her right eye and fell to the ground. I awoke back in my quarters, and everything was not what I expected. I looked at the clock. It's 07:50 hours. There was dust all over the table from when the newspaper self-destructed. Something was different. I could tell it was as if nothing had happened. I had just sat down and looked at the newspaper.
I seriously need vacation.
I said. I hear a commotion off in the distance, and I step outside.
They're here. It's real. It's real.
Someone is screaming in a van that drives by. I can see his face. It's old what's-his-name.
Oh my God, there he is.
He screams.
Get that guy. He's not one of us. He's one of them. That's the guy you want. He'll prove it. Help me.
He's absolutely terrified. Apparently, something in the timeline had changed when I retrieved the box.